inside takeaway that really can crush our swing. But before we get into that, I want to hear what you are going to work on in your swing. Leave that comment down below, because if you put it out there in the universe, you hold yourself to it, hold yourself accountable that, hey, I want to really nail this part of my swing, and that's going to make me a better player. And if we see a common theme going, we'll offer some advice on how you can do that and make it better. But this inside takeaway is a really big problem for the golf swing. And why is that? I think everybody hears, hey, don't take the club inside, don't take the club inside, but they don't really fully understand what's going on with that. Well, inside takeaway, assuming we're decently set up, there can usually be some setup issues, but let's assume we have a decent setup. These are the moves that are going to get us with an inside takeaway. It looks like this. We bring the club back. The center of mass of the club, which is somewhere right around here, travels way too far behind our hands. Usually our hands travel out too. That's an issue. We get our hand path in a bad spot. But this club is traveling behind us too much. The center of mass travels back here. Then when we go to hit it, there's two main things that are going to happen. From back here, we are going to kind of work and reroute the club up and then go over the top, because we're trying to figure out a way to line the center mass up. We will see people do this one too, where they go just throw it over. That one can happen because the center of mass is trying to get back in line with the golf club a little bit. That's where it likes to be. But the other one that happens, and this one can be a real trouble spot for a lot of players, especially if you put time into the game. We start seeing that center of mass gets way behind us, and they know, hey, I need to swing from the inside. So they don't want to go over the top. They're too good for that. But what they start doing is lowering the club, but it's so low that they're going to hit the ground really early. So they start to slide, they overly bend, and they start shoving everything out. We see a lot of shanks. I see a lot of thin shots. I see a lot of pushes, overdraws, really hard to control the ball. And the other one is we feel a lot of loss of distance. The number one thing people will describe is that they just feel stuck, right? And that's because they are literally sliding and jamming everything they can with this side bend behind them, and they have nowhere to go. The issue, well, that comes from all these takeaways, but how are we making that happen? How do we correct it, and what is going on that's going to make this takeaway a little bit better? Well, when we start technically breaking down the takeaway, there's three main things that I think people need to work on. When we go back, the first one is we don't load our wrists properly. They're afraid of being too handsy. A lot of times people have been taught, hey, wide with the club, get it wide away from them. Well, when they do that, when they're wide and they don't set the club, that club travels way inside behind them. That gets to be a problem. It also has a lot of problems with you're moving your body, and then you have to start bending back to counteract that. You get a little bit out of balance when you do that. But the main thing is they're not loading the club properly. The second thing that they do is, when they're doing that, is they start rolling these arms. So if we look at our arms, specifically the lead arm, you have your arm here. You can turn it. It rotates. We have what's called pronation, supination. The way I remember it, how I was taught, turn it like you're holding a bowl of soup. That's supination. So if I'm turning my hands so my hands are facing up, I'm turning my arms and the hands face up like I'm holding soup, that is supination. Now, what most people do is they pronate this lead arm. They turn it so this elbow, this lead elbow, would be facing this camera here, and that brings this club way back behind them. It also shoves their hands way out in front of them, so their hand path gets off, and they got to reroute those hands somehow to get the club back into a circle so they can hit the ball. That is a big issue. Now, the third thing that will happen is they will work on, hey, we're going to bring this club back, and they go like this. They will then start to stand up, because when you do this, your arm is going to start working around your body, club is going back. You actually have to balance out a little bit. It gets really heavy to stay in a position where you are actually staying in posture. So a lot of people are standing up out of their posture when they do this. This is one of the worst spots you can get in, is when people bring this club back and they pronate this lead arm, but try to stay in posture. you are in a really, really bad spot if that's what you're doing. It gets to be very, very difficult. So that is one of the things that I would not like to see, and as this takeaway has such a negative effect on the rest of the swing, how do we, or what would we like to see if we're going to make a good one? So we have our 3 issues. How do we work on those? Well, the first one is we got to load the wrists. Okay, we got to load the wrists. So when I go and bring this club back, not enough people use their wrists properly, but they usually don't use them enough as they're bringing it back. So when we go ahead and get set up, my trail wrist here, the first thing I want to do is I like for them to feel like this wrist is going to load into what's called extension. So if I just take my wrist and bend it backwards, this trail wrist is going to load into extension. The lead wrist we can worry about, but that's going to control some other things in our swing. We can worry about that a little bit later in a different video. But this trail wrist, when I bend it back, I want to feel like it bends back, and I want to feel like it's staying a little bit on top of the golf club. I don't want to feel like it bends back and under the club. That's not necessarily going to help us here. You're going to see that club want to roll inside. So if I only move my wrists, I would see that club staying outside of my hands here. That is what I want to see from a good takeaway. I want to see this club somewhere, I like to see it outside the hands slightly. You can have it right on the hands. That would work too. You can have it just slightly inside. That also works. Just slightly. Don't really see anybody that's good where they have this club way inside. So if it's a little bit too far outside when you're just working on loading your wrists, where you're bending that wrist back, that's fine. As we add the next parts, it should smooth out a little bit. But again, as we work on what's going on in our swing, you'll see how this can work and into our favor. Now, the second part here is we're going to talk about the lead arm. So we said this lead arm will pronate. Elbows pointing towards the camera. We don't like that. The opposite of that is we need to supinate the lead arm. So as I'm working back, I work back, I want to feel like my lead arm is actually turning towards the target here a little bit. I bring it back, and my lead arm combined with load the wrist, turn the lead arm. Now this club is going to want to stay outside my hands and stand up a little bit more. Why do we want to see that? Why do we want to see this club stand up a little bit more? Well, if I keep that going up to the top of the backswing, when I transition, the center of mass is more in line with the grip. When I transition, this club can now work and shallow out, depending on how I move. If I work and move correctly in the downswing, this club's going to shallow out, and then I can work my way through the rest of the golf swing. If I have the club in a spot where this club is too shallow here, or too flat, or the center mass is too far behind us, if I move, I've got a problem. I've got problems. Even if I do it correctly and I try to shallow it, I'm going to go way out. I've got a side bend and bend backwards in an effort to hit the ball properly. It just doesn't work. It's too hard, too inconsistent. So this lead arm, we need it to supinate, combined with loading our wrist as we take it away. And you can see as I start combining these things, when I did the first drill, my club was out here. Start combining these things, now my club is getting into a little bit more of a neutral position as we do this. Now, what you'll also see is when I do this, you're going to feel that your hands are working more in and close to your body. That's good. I talked about it earlier about your hands start fighting to get back into the circle to hit the golf ball. Well, our hands travel around our body as we're going through to strike the ball. If you start moving them outside of that circle, especially right away, you're now fighting to get your hands back in a position where you can just make contact with the golf ball. That's why we see a lot of issues start as well right away from the takeaway, because you take your hands off of the hand path that you need to make good contact. So I like to see that, where our hands stay close to our body. I also like to see this lead arm start working in. I like to see a little bit of depth, especially if we're trying to draw the ball. I like to see some depth in this lead arm as we're taking it back to the golf ball or away from the golf ball. Now, the third thing we said was tilts. Again, if you do the first two steps, I think your tilts will start to clean up a lot anyway. Because when we move our hands properly and we load the club properly, what we'll see is that you naturally want to start tilting down to the golf ball. It's really hard to bring it in and then start standing up. That's not the most natural thing. It does happen sometimes, but it is not something that we see all the time. So I don't even prescribe a drill for that until I see it becoming a problem. So I'd work on these first two things and then go from there. Now you're saying, all right, Scott, how do I do this? All right, I know what to do, but what are the drills that I need to do? So two main drills. I like to do a lot of one-handed swings because when we're talking about center of mass of the club, we're talking about where the club is at in space. What ends up happening is why it can be a little bit cumbersome is the farther the center of mass gets out of line, even if you go way out here, the club starts getting very heavy. So if I do this one-handed, you really can feel how that club is getting really heavy, and it shouldn't feel that heavy. So the first thing I like to do is I like to do some trail wrist only, bring the club back, feel this trail wrist load. Again, if you're doing this and the club gets outside, that's okay. Maybe you're feeling that trail hand stay a little more on top. That's okay. Get this club to work up. From this point of view, you'll see the club is just outside of my trail leg here, okay? When I get this club, I'm at what's called P2. The club is parallel to the ground. I've got this club loaded, and I have it just outside my trail leg. I'm not reaching. This is what I usually see way out here. I want to see this club loading as we go back. The second one then is we're going to go to our lead arm. Lead hand only. We're going to make our swing, and we're just going to work on bringing it back, and I want to feel, again, we're trying to feel supination in this lead arm. So when I bring this back, I'm going to feel this lead elbow stay down, and I'm going to feel this club standing up. Really want to see this club standing up. A lot of people, when they do this, feel like the butt end of the club is pointing down at their foot line or even behind their foot line. That is okay. Again, as you do this, if you start making some swings, you'll realize that the only way you can swing the club is to actually let that club shallow, and then you have to support it by using some rotation, using some pivot. It can actually be a good one. It's a little hard to hit the ball doing it. You can try it, but I wouldn't try it very hard. But it's a great way to kind of see what's going on with the club and how this all is going to work. So again, bring it back, feel this club standing up, combine those two, right wrist back, pronation, okay? Now I've got a takeaway that is going to function for our golf swing. So nailing that takeaway, letting that club come back, and getting into a good spot here at P2, which lets us continue to P3 and 4, you're going to be in a much better spot. You're going to have the club lined up in a way that allows your body to move in a better way. You're going to be more repeatable. You're going to have better function that makes your golf swing more reliable. You can shoot lower scores. So that's why we're looking at this. If you have any questions about it, please let me know in the comments down below. Again, write down what you're going to work on. What part of your swing do you want to work on? Hold yourself accountable. Just having it written down somewhere, not even somewhere where you can reference all the time, just having it somewhere written down. You'll remember it more, and you're going to be more accountable to it. So make sure you do that. And as always, click that subscribe button if you're not a subscriber already. Really looking forward to having a good year, and any questions that we can help you with, let us know. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.